Okay, welcome to this lecture on containment policy. Now, why am I dedicating this entire thing to it? Because it's really quite a big factor. Okay, now if you would refer to your SEQ list, okay, let me hold on. So if you look at the SEQ list here, Bukit View containment policy was a success for the USA. Let's see. Truman Doctrine and Marshall Plan were successful in containing communism in Europe. How far do you agree with this statement? And tensions between USA and Soviet Union escalated after World War II due to Truman Doctrine and Marshall Plan, which, sorry, by the way, they are part of the containment policy. Containment policy was justified. How far do you agree? Marshall Plan was a success. This question actually, I will talk more about it, but it's from a O-level specimen paper. Policy of containment successful in containing the spread of communism. Policy of containment was a great success. Was a success. Okay. Was succeeded. So as you can see from the questions, most of it is geared towards the success on the failure of the containment policy. So that's one way in which you can think about this particular section in which I'm doing now. At the same time, you should also realize that the SEQs are not as straightforward as before. This is like the containment policy is actually one part of a factor that leads to the outbreak of the Cold War. But now they are looking specifically at this alone, and somehow or another there seems to be actually many questions that they can ask concerning just the containment policy alone. Okay, coming back to the slide, I would also refer to the textbook a lot more because there are more details in there than on my slides here. Okay, but you can start thinking about the containment policy as chicken pox, and what the USA is actually trying to do is to contain the virus, which is communism. And so therefore it says the term containment policy, okay, to contain communism within itself so that it doesn't spread to any other countries. And the ways in which they are going to carry out containment is to limit communism to Russia and Soviet Union or the other countries in which they have already established their influence in, and at the same time increase their own democratic influence to the rest of Europe so as to counter the influence of communism. So as you can see here, right, the containment policy is actually quite straightforward and easy to understand. But the thing about this is how it is actually being carried out. And at the same time, if you're thinking about the SEQs, right, it's not very clear in the textbook, and you really need to think about this and explain it on your own. How is it actually considered a success? In what ways is it a success? Is it a success in terms of their ability to stop communism, as in contain communism? Or is it in their ability to actually increase their own influence in the rest of Europe? Then is it considered a success? So this is actually quite a tricky question to consider. Okay. Now, if you look at the textbook as well on page 14, they first started off talking about American adoption of the containment policy by referring to this thing called Cannon's Long Telegram. Okay, hang on. Okay, so if you want to know what is Cannon's Long Telegram, you can go Google it and go and read the entire thing. It is, yeah, on this particular website. Just Google it. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. But as you can see here, 19 pages. Okay, and this is the example of a telegram, the real telegram, real Cannon's telegram here. Um, and you can see how he actually breaks down what the telegram is going to be about, and he actually talks about the basic features of post-war Soviet Union's outlook. The background of this outlook is projection in practical policy on official level. Oh my goodness. Okay, you won't be able to understand all this, but okay. Okay, this is George Cannon speaking. I apologize in advance for this burdening of telegraphic channel, but questions involved are of such urgent importance, particularly in view of recent events, that our answers to them, if they deserve attention at all, seem to me deserve it at once. Okay, where follows part one, basic features of, okay, just now I've already mentioned. And then you can see from the very first part, USA still lives in an antagonistic capitalist encirclement with which in the long run there can be no permanent peaceful coexistence. So if you look at this, you will know that they are in a state of a cold war already. as stated by Stalin, okay, blah blah blah. Okay, you can go read on your own if you really want to. Now, so the purpose of the telegram was to actually answer questions about what Soviet Union's intentions were, and for the guy George Kennan, that's why it's called Kennan's long telegram. He's supposedly the expert on Soviet Union because he went to Russia itself and went to there to look at how things were, and so he so-called understands what the Soviet Union were trying to do lah. Okay, so his long telegram actually influenced the United States government into shaping their thinking and into influencing this containment policy. Okay, and it's not just this. Okay, so if you look at the textbook page 16, it also talks about this thing called the Iron Curtain. Okay, Winston Churchill, he is a very, very famous British politician who led Britain through World War II and is widely regarded as one of the most influential prime ministers of that time. He made this famous Iron Curtain speech, and it was a metaphor, okay, according to the textbook, it's a metaphor for the ideological and political divide between Soviet sphere of influence and Western Europe. And it also symbolizes, the efforts of Soviet Union to block its sphere of influence from open contact with the West. So think of it as really a curtain that is falling in between the two sides of Europe. And if you look at the map on your textbook on page 16, right, okay, it would see where the borders of the Iron Curtain lies, in which it divides Germany into two. We'll talk about the division of Germany later. Then you see Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Austria on one side, and then Switzerland, Italy, Yugoslavia on the other side of Europe. So it's like a difference between Western and Eastern Europe, and it is divided by this Iron Curtain because of the competing Cold War. Now, why is whatever Winston Churchill said influential at all is also because of the fact that he is actually really a very famous politician, and his words do weigh a lot and influence the others in making this containment policy. A side note about Winston Churchill, there was once some woman who insulted. Okay, the woman was some fellow politician, and she insulted him by saying that if I were your wife, I would actually poison your coffee. And then so Winston Churchill actually replied in a very witty manner to say that, woman, if you were my wife, I would drink that coffee. I hope you understand the joke there. Right, okay, so you can see, right, so the importance of Winston Churchill and his Iron Curtain speech actually does also contribute to the influence of this, not the Iron Curtain, but the division of the two ideologies, and it also contributes to this policy of containment as well. The start of the containment of policy, policy of containment, sorry, is this thing called the Truman Doctrine, as that goes in line together with this thing called the Marshall Plan. Okay, now you need to understand the thing about doctrines. So if you look at the definition of doctrine according to your textbook on page 16, the doctrine is a formal statement on a set of fundamental principles and beliefs. So the Truman Doctrine is named after the President of the United States, that's Harry Truman. He's the one who took over after the World War II President Dwight Eisenhower. Actually, was it Dwight Eisenhower? Oh crap, I cannot remember. Yeah, but the World War II President who actually died, and after that passing on power to Harry Truman, who was the Vice President at that time. And for him, what he believed in was that in order to contain communism, he needed to provide economic and military aid to these two countries, Greece and Turkey, where actually the communists were gaining influence. And Truman believes that weak states were likely to be influenced by communism, so it was necessary to provide aid to them to curb the communist activities within. Think of it this way: communist works best when there are many, many poor people. And so, if you look at these two countries, it was after World War II. They weren't really heavily involved in World War II, but still affected by it economically. So, when they are weak economically, that's where Stalin would actually triumph. In order to prevent the rise of communism in these countries, how about we just give them more money? And by giving them more money, they will be strong economically, and then they won't have to actually worry about them potentially falling to communists. So that was the objective and the purpose of the Truman Doctrine. So as you can see, the doctrine, it comes in closely with what Truman believes in. So that's the definition of a doctrine. Okay, it is according to his beliefs that this needs to be done. Okay, so you need to understand what is the Truman Doctrine, because later on we would see some other things in the form of Marshall Plan, Comecon, Comiform, and then you will start to get confused. So at this stage in time, please make sure you understand what is a Truman Doctrine before we move on. Now, the one of the products of also the Truman Doctrine, which is also part of the containment policy, is the Marshall Plan. So this is in line with the Truman Doctrine, because the Truman Doctrine, right, is to provide the economic aid, right, to Greece and Turkey, whereas this Marshall Plan, okay, it comes from what's the guy's name? George Marshall. Okay, George Marshall, he was the one who came up with this plan, and this plan aims to provide economic aid to all countries in Europe, whether or not they are under communist influence or not. In other words, Stalin could actually accept this Marshall Plan aid if needed. And can you imagine the kind of effect that it would have on the communist countries that are under the satellite states, basically? So they would basically look at over at this Marshall Plan and say, oh, you actually can give me money, and if they need it, they can actually ask for it and get it. But the thing about this is that the question would be whether or not did Stalin actually allow for these satellite states to take the money. But the thing is that with this action of the Marshall Plan, right, it actually tries to cut away the communist influence in the communist states. Okay, of course, if you put yourself in the shoes of these communist satellite states, and then if you're in need of money, Stalin is not giving you any money, you would definitely turn to the Marshall Plan and you would try to get it in some way or another. Okay, so the idea behind this plan, the second point here, was that the weak economic situation in Europe would actually provide opportunities for communists to promote communism. So it would make communism less appealing and minimize the chances of them embracing communism. It made the USA look sincere and active in helping Europe rather than Soviet Union, which was being concerned about its own survival. So you see, it's really, you think about it in the context of the entire Cold War, this is really a very petty thing, a very see who's better thing. Okay, so in this case, what USA is trying to do is to make themselves look good by lending money. Of course, you can ask the question, is like bribing somebody, and yes, that is precisely the point. Okay, it's like making themselves look good by giving away money. Okay, not really giving away, but lending money by making them look like the big brother who is taking care of everyone, as compared to the selfish Stalin and Soviet Union who was concerned about their own survival. Okay, so you can see the impact of the Marshall Plan. It is quite great. If you would look at your textbook, okay, on page 18, okay, it will tell you about the impact of the Marshall Plan is that it helped to kickstart the economic recovery of Western Europe and contributed a great deal to blah blah blah, a lot of other things as well. So in this sense, right, it did help to contain the spread of Soviet influence in Europe. And with the Marshall Plan, there was a perception that USA was actually sincere and active in helping Europe, unlike Soviet Union, who is concerned with its own survival. Okay, all these are stated in the textbook. So this is where you can also start thinking about the question of what is the success of the containment policy. And through this, we can say that, the success of the containment policy would be shown in the Marshall Plan. Although you would realize the textbook would be very limited in actually showing you examples or quoting you facts and figures about the success of the Marshall Plan. So this is the difficulty that you would face when you are actually doing a question such as what is the success of the containment policy. Okay, and for the Soviet Union, how they responded was actually through their own kind of Marshall Plan, and that is in the form of Comecon. Okay, Comecon is the Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, and this is provided only to the communist countries, and it is their own form of economic assistance provided. Cominform is different. Okay, many people would contrast Truman Doctrine and Marshall Plan with Cominform and Comecon, but that's not the case. Cominform is just simply an organization. It is unlike Truman Doctrine, which is a belief, which is a set of principles. Okay, Cominform simply is an organization to tighten the control on the satellite states and also to make sure that everybody is brother in one organization. Alright, so that's it. Okay, my time is running out now because the videos are limited to 15 minutes. So I shall pause here and finish it up in the next lecture.